Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the second installation of our fundraising webinar series. My name is Ricky Bentley. I am the program manager at Connecticut Land Conservation Council. For those of you that aren't familiar, we're the umbrella organization for Connecticut's land trusts, and we support your work through policy advocacy, funding, technical assistance, and capacity building programs like this one. Today's presentation is the second of a four-part webinar series to help land trusts meet their financial goals. If you don't already, I encourage you to subscribe to our e-news. It's a great way to stay in the loop about our upcoming programs. Today's webinar is all about identifying, researching, and qualifying your donors. A few quick Zoom notes. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. To help preserve bandwidth, we ask that you stay muted and keep your video off until the Q&A at the end. And we are recording. We'll share the recording with you within the next couple of days. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. Now, without any further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce today's presenters, Paul Dunne and Evan White. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Ricky. Can everybody hear me okay? Yep. That's good. All right, good. I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint. So if you'll give me 1 second to get that on, we will have that ready to go. And Ricky, if you'll just let me know if everybody is able to see this. Are we good? Great. That's so good. Hey, it's wonderful to be with you all this morning. Listen, the first thing I want to tell you is, although I run a consulting firm and Evan is my COO, one of the things we like to say is, we have been where you are. It's just recently, probably, I guess it's been 8 years now that I've been a consultant. Before then, I've been like many of you all, either in a shop where I was the only person doing everything. So I felt like the guy on the Ed Sullivan Show who was spinning plates and trying to keep them all going at the same time. By the way, that just dated me really well there, but I felt like that guy. Or I've been in large organizations where I was a vice president of a hospital or a college, and I had a large staff. So Evan and I have been on both sides of this, and in fact, Evan is still doing a lot of that work for an organization in Dallas, Texas. So I say that to let you know that what we're going to be talking about today is shared with you. We've learned it in the trenches and working. And so it's not us coming down and giving you information that we're just thinking about in theory. This is something that not only did we work on as we were VP of development or development director or database administrator, whatever, but also that we have brought in now and work with our clients. Every one of them that we work with uses exactly what we're talking about. So, and that being said, I just want to let you know that I've stood in your shoes and sat at your desk, and I hope this will be helpful for you. I do want to tell you that I was joking about it with Ricky beforehand. Next week, I think I'm presenting. Sharon and I are doing a dual presentation about major gifts, which is honestly where my heart and soul is, and I teach that all over. But I have to be real honest with you. I know databases and search engines and all that isn't really exciting, but the game is won here. The game is won here. In fact, 90% of the game is won before you even start to contact the prospect, because you need to have this information in place. You know, I always like to talk about preparation, and Abe Lincoln had this great quote which said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And that's what this does, everyone. That's what working on databases does for you and working with search engines. So as we talk today about fueling good, how fundraising search engines can power your mission, I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. I know it's a real confusing time also, because there's just so many that are out there. And these are just a few of them that I brought up here that are there. And Evan and I always talk about this, and we look through and say, gosh, is Kindsight, which is the former iWave, is that the best one to use right now? So we use Donor Search. Gosh, how about some of these others? I know if any of you are on Blackbaud and using Razor's Edge, they have Wealth Engine. So there's so many of them. We need to understand that this is really an old profession, and it's something, this donor screening, that you need to do uh, because there have been organizations like Harvard and other big organizations that have been doing this over 40 years. And right now, it's just become affordable for some smaller nonprofits to be able to use this. Before we had all these that are available now in the pre-internet era, they used to use, I remember this, printed directories that you could buy. You could buy in Houston. I remember they had the Houston Star, and it was all the wealthy people in Houston that they just kind of lumped into a book, and they put it out every year, and you'd spend $80 to get that. And then after that, we in the early 90s, we went into they used to have CDs that were containing lists. So you get one, same purpose, but you just download it. But now it was searchable, right? So you could look at, oh gosh, where does this zip code? And I could pull out everybody in a zip code. And then of course the internet started getting into it in the late 90s. We really started having more internet areas, and it's been interesting. The one that we use a lot, we use a few, but iWave, which is Kindsight, as you see on your screen, we use that one. They've been around since 1991, and it was just in the last year, so after 30 some years, that they merged with Kindsight. Kindsight actually bought them out, and they're working together and have built a very, very strong donor prospect research software that we use. I have the opportunity to work with different organizations, and I have to tell you, I go in a lot of times, and I ask them, about their budget. How are they doing the work? What are they looking at? And I even ask them questions that are as simple as, what's your budget for this year? What is your fundraising budget? And if they know that, then I ask them, how are they going to get there? And it reminds me of a story. So you guys, Evan will be laughing at this, but I'm kind of a story guy, and I like doing that. But it reminded me of the story of Jakob Benwolf Krantz. And Jakob Benwolf Krantz, probably no one on the call knows him, but he was a Lithuanian preacher who was also kind of the mother goose of Lithuania. And he tells this story about this hunter that's going through the woods. And as he's tromping through the woods, he comes upon a tree, and it has a bullseye with an arrow right in the middle of it. And he goes a little farther, and he sees a tree with a bullseye on it, the arrow right in the middle. Farther, tree, target, arrow right in the middle. Keeps going out, tree, target, arrow right in the middle, where he finally comes upon this little boy. And he looks at this little boy who has a quiver full of arrows and a bow in his hand. He goes, little boy. By the way, the impersonations are free this morning. But he says, little boy, are you the one who is this amazing marksman? You must tell me the secret of what you do and how you make these bullseyes. And the little boy goes, oh, it's easy, mister. I shoot first and then draw the target around it. Now, that's a funny way of saying something that a lot of nonprofits do. Is we start out the year, and usually a CFO or someone in the organization, could be your executive director or CEO, and they tell you, this is what we need you to raise this year, and you don't know how you're going to get there. You have the plan. How are you going to do that? And so this is where this wealth screen, the benefit of having these search engines, can really help you. So let's look at real quick, how do you benefit from wealth screening? Well, here's 4 areas that you can look at. First of all, it creates realistic fundraising goals. Again, talking about that target. It helps you set your target and let you know where you're going to get this money from. It also helps you with sending targeted fundraising appeals. Now, I know everybody on this call is pretty much in one field, but gosh, if you were having an event and you would like, and so one of your board members is having a home event for you, wouldn't it be great if you could get the names and information and some fundraising and philanthropic information about everybody who's in their neighborhood? So you have that before you go in. It helps you locate major donors. We're going to dig into that very much more. And then it helps you tap into matching gift opportunities. A lot of the information that you'll see in profiles that we have, it gives you the information of where they're working. And all you have to do is look up if they're a part of it on Double the Donation or some of these other ones, where you can see if there is matching gift possibilities with that donor. All this can come from this wealth screening. In addition, it helps you find hidden major donor prospects that may have given a smaller gift to your organization. I can't tell you how many times this comes up. All the time it comes up where we're looking at it. And by the way, I've never had an organization I've worked with that I haven't had this conversation with the executive director or CEO, that he'll look at it and we'll be looking through the board and he'll go, oh my goodness, that board member gives us 2,500 and he's given $20,000 down the street somewhere. And of course, my thing that I have to do is stop them from calling that board member and say, just it allows you to know that you need to create this relationship and you need to deepen this, and all that. It helps you re-engage lapsed donors. Evan and I worked with an organization in Texas, a very large organization. And as we looked at their information of lapsed donors, they have a huge donor base. And their lapsed donors that they had not followed up on, and it wasn't a large amount. It was under, I think it was 80 to 100 people, had given over $8 million over that 5-year period, and they had just fallen off. So it helps you re-engage those lapsed donors. It helps you find new major donor prospects who have never even made a gift to your organization. Evan is going to dig into that a lot more later. And then it helps design the gift chart. We are large believers in a gift chart. Here's what a gift chart looks like. And by the way, I use this for annual fund. I also use it for campaigns, obviously. But it's important to do. This is how you draw the target. And the way you put people in these different slots and how you do it is actually through data screening and through that wealth screening that you look at it. And you can look at it. And the thing I want you to really realize this is that almost 80% of your gifts on a chart usually come from less than 40 gifts. I'm sorry, 80% of your dollars that you're going to raise come from less than 40 gifts. And you can see here, out of a $10 million goal, you're already at almost 8 million just from that amount. So it's very important. It's something that we do with our clients, is put together this gift chart. And by the way, as you look at it, when you put those names down there, and we suggest having three prospects for every gift that you'll need. So if you look at that first one for $2 million and you have 3 prospects there, that doesn't mean that the 2 that may not give the 2 million are just not going to give you anything. They fall down somewhere else in the gift chart. But this is your roadmap for hitting of what you need to do. And so with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to my partner, Evan White. He's going to talk a little bit, but we're going to look at 2 specific types of screening that Evan's going to take you through these next 2 slides. The first one is your current database, because one thing that you need to do if you're going to do donor screening is immediately wash all of your people through a donor wealth screening that you can have. So your current database, and then after that, wealth screening prospecting, or how do we find these new donors? And I know everybody really needs that. So Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. It's a pleasure to see everybody this morning, or talk to everyone this morning. My name is Evan White. I'm a Chief Operations Officer for the nonprofit group, also President-elect of the Dallas chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And so really, Paul hit the nail on the head. Wealth screening and these other types of screenings really do help give us a a starting point. A lot of us I know have, lots of different hats we wear in our roles. We do different responsibilities, and sometimes the fundraising can get either put to the back burner or put off to the side just because we have this list of hundreds of people that, where do we start? Who do we talk to next? Um, Wealth screening can help us identify and prioritize those individuals. It can help us understand who our hidden gems are. It can help us understand just a lot of things, give us more insight, more information. And in this information age, the more information we have, the better we can be at our jobs. So Paul, you can go to the next slide. And I know one thing that a lot of us have in short commodity is time. Mentioning like being able to prioritize prospects, being able to see who's like, if I need to go talk to 10 people this week and I only have time to go see 5, how many of those are like, what are the wealth markers for those? What are their interests? What are their political leanings? What are their property holdings? All of these pieces of information help paint that 360-degree picture of a donor, and that can help us save time, which ultimately benefits our organization. Uh, So here's kind of what we ran a project for a small Christian school in South Texas. This is kind of their summary page of what they got back from doing their well screening. As you can see at the top, we screened close to about 2,400 records. We saw through this that if you look at the percentage of strong prospects or prospects rated a 4, which is the highest rating iWave can give, they didn't have very many, which is telling. It tells us that they need to invest in their major donors. They need to invest in building those relationships that, as you look down, like we can see what are the top 4 causes that these individuals give to. It's a Christian school, and a lot of these people are giving to education, but why are they not giving to this school? What is the case for support that we need to make or that we need to build so that they can approach these donors in a more effective way? You can also see that a lot of this is the sources of wealth is based on property. That tells us also that maybe a lot of their money is tied up in investments, that their cash flow isn't very high, that these particulars of, just these little insights we get into why donors are donating, how they are donating, and who's not in the conversation. Who do we need to go after? Who do we need to look at as we go through these screenings? You can see that the affinity level for this, well, let me back up. So iWave bases each of their ratings on the 4 things, and Paul mentioned them earlier: propensity, affinity, and capacity. Those are all just fancy words. Of propensity is how often are they giving. Affinity is what are they giving to, what causes, what areas are they giving to human services? Are they giving to environmental causes? Are they giving to schools? And then capacity is the big one we look at as far as like, what is their potential giving over not a lifespan, but for maybe a 3 to 5 year period. With the property ratings that these individuals have, maybe they have to liquidate some assets if you were going into a campaign to help make those major gifts. So all of these things together help give us these ratings that, propensity, we see that a lot of these groups or a lot of these individuals are giving on a frequent level, but maybe not giving to the causes that are like this school, and that there's probably minimal capacity in this group of donors. So we are going to need to look outside of this group or do a little extra research to find out who they need to talk to.
And Evan, let me jump in real quick.
Sure.
We picked this one specifically because we wanted to show everybody one that really wasn't the all-star. I want to let you know,
For sure.
sometimes you're going to do a search like this, and as you do it, and yours may come up something like this or a little bit better, or it may be, fantastic. But what it does is it again gives you that roadmap. It sets that target that you can go ahead and say, oh, wow, our donors in here, they really aren't the ones. We do need to find new donors. I'm working on that with one of our clients right now that works in the homeless area down in South Texas. And we're having to do that. We're looking at all new donors, and bringing them in. We're still honoring the ones that we have and still working with them, but it became very clear in this situation that this organization, which by the way is very well known in the town that they are in, but they just didn't realize it. And of course, you also have those situations, which is, you all won't run into this, I don't think, as much, but for someone like this, they're getting tuition. And so a lot of their donors thought, well, tuition just pays to run the school. And obviously, if you've ever had a child or worked with a private school or anything, it doesn't at all, right? It's it pays for part of that student, but you have it. So it gives you some insight. By the way, this is the first page. You can see at the bottom there of 3 of other information that is given out, but we wanted to give you this overall look at it. And I think it is really important for you to see. By the way, this is again just their database that was screened, just their database. So this is nothing extra.
Right. And one other thing, Paul, real fast, is the things that aren't like some things that the well screening like is intended to tell you, and then some of the other byproducts of it. I remember having the conversation with the headmaster of this school of like some of the people that were rated as a low or weak rating. This is just like Paul just mentioned, this is the database side. This is just the database knowledge. You also have the relational knowledge side of the equation too. He knew that a couple of those individuals did have capacity, and maybe this just tells you that those individuals are hiding it really well, or
And
that you may be the only ones talking to them, or one of few that are talking to them, which can also be encouraging.
And Evan, let me just state one other thing for everyone. When you look at this, the other piece that you need to realize is uh, iWave and pretty much all the donor wealth screening tools, they get it from, I think iWave goes to 46 different databases or softwares that are out there. So like LexisNexis and political giving and all different areas. But if your group, in other words, if you look at that affinity rating, if you don't see affinity for yours in your database, but they're giving to you, you're probably, and which is smart, by the way, you're not reporting your giving to the sources that are there, which means they don't know. iWave and Donor Search and others don't know that they have an affinity for land conservation or whatever it might be, because your organization and others aren't reporting it. But we know it inside. So a lot of times you'll see, as we look at profiles, someone's rating will be lower in affinity, but they're in your database and they've given, which means they have an affinity, which means that can shoot them up. So this is where it helps to have someone help you read the score. All right, Evan, I'll go on for you. Sorry about that. Well,
No, you're
actually,
good.
Evan, so as we talk about this, sorry, we need to talk about new prospect screening. And this is the part, and this is where Evan was talking about, where we look at these 4 areas that iWave and other ones look at, other database screening organizations look at. The first one is capacity. Obviously, do they have money? All right, that's the first thing. Then the next one is propensity to give. Do they give money away? Do they like it? I think we all have known wealthy people who don't give it away, right? But these are people who are philanthropic, so there's a rating there. Affinity. Do they have an affinity for what you're doing? In other words, do they give in your area? Evan will talk a little bit about the NTEE code that all you have. And then obviously geographic. I know I'm talking with a bunch of people that are across the state that have your certain areas of land conservation that you're doing. And so that's going to be really important, that you can get these screenings geographically. And so as you look into that, as you look into these 4 areas, they all have a rating from 1 to 4 in iWave. I think Donor Search, Evan, don't they do it 1-1, 1?
Yeah, they'll do donor. They all have different ratings, and
Yeah.
I guess it's a good to note real quick that depending on the tool that you're using, iWave allows you to customize your screening, so you can pull the levers as far as like, do you want it to weigh affinity more? Do you want it to weigh capacity more? Do you want it to weigh propensity more? Whereas donor search is like, we have our rating score, and it's our rating score. The top rating, they've given a proven gift of $5,000 somewhere, and then they kind of fall down there based on wealth markers. So
Yeah.
different tools for different folks, but it's all good information.
And to let you know, with iWave, which we use predominantly, iWave rates people 1 to 4, 4 being highest, 1 being lowest, and they rate them weighed on these 3 areas: capacity, propensity, and affinity. And usually 4s have proven philanthropy of $10,000 and above, a $10,000 at least one-time gift. and above. And the threes have a lot of that too. But that's where you look at it. So that's why you look at these different areas in that. And the other thing we need to look at are the wealth indicators. So how do they come up with these ratings for them, right? And these are pretty much the areas that help them indicate the wealth. First of all, real estate ownership is very heavily weighted. And when I talk with our clients about individual donors, when we're getting ready to go out and do a major ask, we look at, is their capacity rated very heavily weighted by real estate ownership? You'll see that a lot, and that will help you because iWave will give you a suggested ask amount over a 5-year period, so a pledge amount. And as you look at that, you really have to see, all right, well, they're telling me to ask for $400,000, but the majority of this person's wealth is all in real estate. And obviously, in Connecticut, some of the most expensive real estate on the planet that we have, a lot of times that gets skewed a little bit. Business affiliations, I love that it shows those in there. Where do they sit on boards? What was their business? What do they do? They give you all that information. Stock holdings, they tell you how they're, what stocks that they've seen them invest in. By the way, they're bringing that in by a lot of different searches. So what this does, and it helps you not to have to look all this stuff up when you're doing it, especially if you're 2-person office, you're getting to do it. And then political contributions, every political contribution has to be rated and has to be put in. And I just want to tell you, not is that only good for knowing about wealth, but it helps with your conversation, especially in where we are right now. And so I don't mean to get on this soapbox, but I'm going to. You work for your organization. And so if we can keep that piece out of it, it's better to do, but it's good to have that knowledge behind the scenes of doing that. And I know that's really difficult for us, especially those of us in nonprofit, seeing things that are being cut and everything that's going on. It's hard for us sometimes to bite our tongue, but our organization is who we're working for, and we need to take care of that. Right, Evan, I'm going to take you into talking a little. Go ahead.
Real quick, Paul, just on your slide here, just something that just popped into my head that we should have added to this. Most of the wealth screening engines also will give you if your individual that you're looking at or the prospect that you're screening, if they are part of a board of directors. So they break it down by grant giving or grant seeking organizations. So you can also see what other organizations they're involved with, as well as if you're seeking funding from particular foundations or something, that's another insight that it can give you, as well as kind of connecting the relationship dots.
Good thing to talk also in this, we won't go into this much, but iWave also allows you to search foundations, so you can do a searching of foundations, and we just did one of those for someone in New Canaan that we're doing working with, and then they'll also help you search corporations that have a philanthropic area that they do, and it lets you know some of the gifts that they have given in the past and gives you a list on that. So all right, with that, I'm going to turn over. Evan's going to share a little bit about how we do acquisition, how we find people. This is a real interesting map. I'm going to apologize because it may be a little bit small, so I hope you all can see this.
Yeah, I also apologize. This is before Chat GPT took off and made everything pretty. So, so this case use for this particular organization, it was a organization out of Denver that cared for senior adults, and they had multiple facilities around the Denver area, and they had kind of run into that donor wall of, we keep going back to the same people over and over again. How do we find additional people? How do we find additional prospects and donors that are in the area that are interested in what we're interested in, helping the elderly? So the charts here on the side, you can see the breakdown. So what we did was we dropped a pin where they had a facility and the zip codes around there. We did a reverse donor search of who are the DS11s in that area, who are these major gift prospects. So you can see kind of at first blush, we looked at kind of the general, and that's how many donors were in those zip codes and areas. And then the major gift capacity was we shrunk it down to, okay, we see all the donors in that area. Who is a major gift capacity? So $5,000 and above, who could make that kind of gift? And you can see the numbers really shrank down. And then we took it one step further. Who's giving in the area of healthcare and who's giving in the area of human services? And so we were able to break all of those areas down and to see, oh, there's kind of these 40 people, these 120 people that are next to these facilities that, we can start looking in their database. Do we already have these people? Do we have an established connection with them? That they obviously have capacity. These are the people we need to start working our way to.
And Evan, let me jump in and say,
Sure.
and remember, these are people that have given already. So this isn't, these
Mhm.
people have affinity. These are not people that are just, they might have given to something else, to, environmental causes or whatever. These are people that give in that area, that have given some sort of gift in each one of those communities, as you can see. And so the other piece that you'll notice up there is in the upper right hand on the green chart there where it says unique board prospects. We actually went in there and looked for people who would be good board prospects for them, who had either served on a board, have leadership, or could do that. And it pulled out 101 of those for their CEO to actually start looking at, because one of our things that we're charged with was helping them build a new board, build a stronger board. So it helps in that area also. Evan, anything else on this
Yeah.
area?
Well, and I think I remember a couple of those prospects already being on the CEO's radar, and so it was good confirmation for him that he was going down the right path of a couple individuals, opened his eyes to a couple of other individuals. And this is again kind of filling in that donor picture of if we had these individuals in our database and we didn't know they were giving to these other organizations, and we were just having to do the daily grind of these meetings and trying to extract these details and conversations. That's where the real time saving is in this, is you're getting to see kind of their giving history, not just at your organization, but you're getting to see kind of their larger picture, which again goes back to saving you time, guiding conversations, and just maximizing, like, because we only have so much time, we only have so much effort we can put into these things. So let's try to make them the best conversations we can with the best prospects that we can.
So let me give you one other point before we go into the showing you an actual profile of someone, or an abbreviated profile, if you would. But one of the things each of you need to look at is, I believe, Evan, it's in Candid, not Charity Navigator, but Candid, or what used to be the old Guide Star, is
Yes.
each one of your organizations has what's called an NTEE code. It's not your EIN number. It's an NTEE code. If you look at it, look up your organization, you'll see it there. And it tells what you do, right? So it basically, so in other words, if I'm going to give to humane societies or animal, there's a code that's just for that, which means everybody who gives to that, everybody who gives to that NTEE code is in the iWave or donor search or whatever world, universe there. And so that's where they find out the affinity part of this, is because, again, they have given a gift. So I say this to you for two reasons. Number one is you need to go in and look at it. You need to make sure it still actively reflects who you are. In one of our clients in South Texas, they used to work with the homeless population. They had a shelter. They did stuff with the homeless, but they've changed. They're now moving, if you would allow me to say, upstream and helping people not lose their house. So they're keeping people from being homeless. They've gotten rid of their shelter, and they're helping now in electric bill assistance and water assistance and rental assistance. So they're not in that area. When we came in, we looked and we go, you're not in this area anymore. You're here, and you need to change that. So that way, when we looked at who were their donors, then that changes it. And so you need to make sure that your code reflects. Also, you need to realize you can have more than one code. You can have a couple of them. I think it's up to 3, but don't quote me on that. And so, Ricky, don't record me on that part, all right? But anyway, I think it's up to 3 that you can have. But you need to go in and look at the codes that are there and make sure they reflect who you are. Donors, especially now, are getting much more savvy in how they do it. And a lot of them go to either a Charity Navigator, a Guide Star, which is now Candid, and they look up your organizations. not only do you need to make sure your code is correct so for when they're looking for all the organizations come up, but the other thing I would say is make sure you have your information in there. Going from a bronze to a gold is very easy on your rating on most of those. We do that for most of our clients. And we go in and we help them take them from bronze. And bronze means you're just basically registered. Getting into gold is not hard at all. All you have to do is show some of the information they've had, but the main thing is audited financials, which you've got to have every year. So it's just a matter of putting it on there. So that's just a little tip outside of this, but it will help you. But you need to realize, look for that NTEE code and look for that. All right, Evan, I'm going to take you on to the next one. We're going to show you a profile example. So when we work with clients, just to let you know, not only do we find all these people, so if we go back and we see all these people that I'm circling here that have major gift capacity, and then we see the different areas. Well, once you have them, it's great to have their info, to know who they are and everything. But, that's just for a whole group of people, all right? It's not an individual. And so what we do is we go in and every person, and you'll be able to do this, you'll go in and you can say, all right, Jim Stevens, I want to know everything I can know. I want to look at his iWave profile or his donor search profile. And so what we've done, just for the sake of this, some of them can be as long as 20 pages. What we've done is we've brought one down. I'm going to have Evan take you through it, but we've brought it down into one page just so you can see kind of the areas. So Evan, I'm going to click to that. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it. All right, so here we have an individual who's, or a couple, whose iWave score is 3, and it looks like their capacity is somewhere around $750,000. And that capacity is usually, that's, over the course of 3 to 5 years, kind of think major or capital campaign type gift. So their score, so propensity was a 4, so we know they're philanthropically active. We know that they're giving in the community to probably a bunch of different causes, but their affinity is only a 1. So maybe they're either hiding their giving to those types of, like kind of organizations, or maybe that they're looking at other types of organizations is what they're giving to. And then capacity is a 4, so that large 750 capacity, that's we realize that they can give a pretty substantial gift there.
And so, Evan, let me jump in real quick here. So
Sure.
a couple things you need to realize as you look at this, and I picked this one out specifically for all of you all to see. So capacity is a 4. They got money. Propensity is a 4. They like to give away money, but affinity is only a 1. And the only thing that kept them from having a 4, which is the top iWave score, is the affinity. There's 2 or 3 things that could have happened. First of all, as Evan said, they could be really good at hiding their wealth, all right, and how they give. They also could be giving through a DAF, a donor advised fund. Those don't come in individually like that. So there's those 2 reasons that they can do it. And also it might be that they maybe give to this organization and the organization doesn't report their donors, right? They don't say it. So no one knows that they have a great affinity for this group. But here's the piece that I want you to realize more than anything on this first part of the scores. I can't build capacity with anybody. They're either wealthy or they're not wealthy. I can't help build that as a development professional. Propensity to give, I really can't help with that much. I can lead to it a little bit, but I can't help it that much. But affinity, I can do that all day long. I can help them fall in love with my organization if there's any part of that they're interested in. And so I want to let you know, this to us, and ended up being a good donor, is a great person to look after that's kind of hidden for your organization. All right, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then you can see down in their giving interest areas, like a lot of education and even their giving history and charitable donations. You see places like St. Mark's School, SMU. So obviously they have a affinity for the education space. So if this was for, say, like a a children's organization or say like SPCA, like animal type organization, then maybe like that affinity work or telling that story is going to be a little harder. Or say if this is another university looking at them and go, oh man, like yeah, this is my kind of person, this is our kind of donor. And as we look at kind of the other areas in here, like foundations and real estate holdings, you can see, real estate's what's home, like where are they, planting their flag, or where's their presence. Foundations, you can see like they're part of the music, special camp for kids, another chef showcase. So all of these, it just reinforces that story of this is a donor who really is into education. And so we need to lean into, if, say, we're an organization that has an educational program or an educational component to what we do, we really need to lean into telling that story. And that's kind of this profile's saving maybe one or three conversations of getting us to that point of understanding that.
That's good, Evan. And I want to let you know where Evan mentioned about foundations. You could see there this list. They were a board member, they were a director there, whatever they did there. So you can see what they have there, and you get to know their heart, what they're interested in. And Evan, I love how you said that. Knowing that they're interested in some of these areas, it also gives you a place to say, if I was talking to this person and they're a board member at Dallas Summer Musicals, I've gone to that probably 4 or 5 years, and I go, oh my gosh, I loved 2 years ago when they did West Side Story or whatever. And you can find that point to where I say we get on their side of the desk. We come together. A lot of times we look at major gift work, and you'll hear this from me next week, is we sit down with someone and it becomes more transactional as opposed to transformational, which means it's almost like a sales. And what we want to do is we want to bring that person to the other side of the desk, put our arms around each other and say, this is what we're going to do together. And that's what I really want to end with. What's your donor's story? Wealth screening is a piece of what we do to help our donors. It's how we become a philanthropic advisor, which is what my title is that I have there. It's where we get with them and say, what is the best fit for you? Knowing our donor story isn't just good stewardship, it's mission critical. When we understand their why, we can ignite them into something bigger than a transaction. We can invite them into a legacy and partnership, and that's where the true impact will begin. Wealth screening, donor work, database work is all the very first piece of that. The very first piece of that. And so all of this is still part of that relational building with your donor and finding out what their story is. I'm going to open it up for questions. You can scan this if you'd like to and ask me questions and sign up for whatever you need, or you can just write me at paul@thenonprofitgroup.com. With that, Ricky, I'm going to stop sharing and open it up, okay? And Ricky, I don't know if you're on your volume, so good.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, folks, and use the raise your hand function, or just go ahead.
Looks like we're getting a few questions in the chat, Paul. We got from Jen Longmire. It's how important is it to choose a wealth screening tool that interfaces with your donor database?
It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm saying that I'm not even letting Evan answer that right now, just because he would go off for about an hour.
Well, I'll take 30 seconds or something. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier about time. So whenever you have a wealth screening tool that's siloed from your CRM, like a lot of people do that, and that's totally fine. But again, it's saving you that step, saving you that time. I don't know how many times that we're looking at a profile in our system, and if it's one click away, then that's just more time. If it's I've got to go load up this whole big spreadsheet, or I've got to go find in the one-off search and make sure I'm finding the right person and all that, it just comes down to what's that ROI of time savings that you want to have.
It's really important. I can tell you that Evan, I think this year has already done 3 database conversions. We're about to do another one for a client because it didn't interact with donor software,
Mhm.
with the donor wealth screening software. And so we're doing that. So it's really important. And I think someone asked there, and then Pete, I'm going to get to you because your hand's up. But someone asked also, what do they cost? I'll let you know that with our clients, it's free. We provide it free for them. But you're probably looking at, to start off with this, to get everybody through and do what you want to do, you're probably looking at, if you're going to do it on your own, a minimum of, Evan, would you say 55 to 6 grand a year minimum?
Yeah, it can be. It depends on your volume because sometimes they'll charge by the screening. Sometimes there's an access fee to access the portal, and then however many screenings you need. So it's really like it's all part of the negotiation with if you're just using it for one-off searches, you can usually get away a little cheaper than that. But if you're wanting to run bulk screenings, it depends on your record count.
Yeah, and just remembering that when you talk to them, just try to negotiate because you're going to want to do your entire database when you start. You just want to do that and try to negotiate that into the fee. I mean, so that way you can get it done and they're not hitting you up for, if you have 4,000 people in your database, they're going to hit you up for that. So make sure they give you enough screenings to be able to do your database. So hey, Pete, I think you had something for us, and then I think we had someone online, Evan, about Little Green Light. But let me go to Pete. You had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is very helpful. So we got some names. Can you give us some options for the next step? How do you approach them? Any advice we have as opposed to just calling somebody up and say, "Hey, Paul, give me money."
Oh, yeah, yeah, I can. What I try to do is, Pete, I try to start off with what we call a soft ask. So I can tell you with an organization I'm working with now, we started them on a monthly e-blast that the CEO puts out. It's less than 200 words, and it's just a real quick thing. It can be anything top of mind for him. That we've started doing that to soften them. What happens is that helps you get people who would opt out just doing it at that point. Interestingly enough, we haven't had that many opt out that we've done, which has made me really happy. They're a well-known organization, kind of a pillar of the community. So I would suggest some soft reaching out to them at the beginning. And then, it's to me, and you'll hear a lot about this next week because we're going to talk about it in our major gift work. To me, 90% of the game is won by getting the appointment, right? It's if you can get them to say yes, they know they're meeting with someone, who basically has fundraising in their title. So I almost joke and say, I'm offended. I think they're offended if we don't ask, right? But yeah, and also, we need to understand that if I were to ask everybody on this call, you know, have everybody here has probably made a donation at one time or the other, right? They've done a donation. And I've done this and I've asked people, how did you feel about it? So if I'm looking, I can see Jennifer and I go, Jennifer, you've made donations places. How did you feel? And Jennifer's going to say, I felt really good. It made me feel good and I knew I was doing good. I love my job because I get to be involved with people on the day that they're helping other people feel good about what they do. It's not transactional. And by the way, Pete, if they're not going to want to meet with you to talk about what your interest is, then they probably it's probably a hard battle, up that hill. But yeah, I'm always very honest, and Evan will tell you, in my fundraising work, I am just straightforward, and I would say to you something like, Pete, I wanted to talk to you. I've noticed that you're interested in the community or whatever we're doing, and that it's something that I think that you have an interest in and that you've proven it. And as a leader in the community, I'd really like to talk to you about some things that we're doing and see if there's any interest in getting involved with us. But you can see how that's much more soft than, because then when you go there, you'll hear this next week. But when you go into that first meeting with them, there's a reason for 2 ears and one mouth. And so you want to hear, you need to put out your areas of impact for them. but don't do what most people, the mistake they make, which is giving them, the company line and just blah and just, vomiting all the information and facts and figures and stuff. Just ask them, what do you know about us? Have you heard about us? Yeah, Paul, I really like this part of the conservation work that you do. I like that you're educating the young group. Well, now they've told you what they're interested in, right? They've told you that, but you've got to start digging that out, and then at the end of that meeting, you'll find out next week what you do. But yeah, look at it that way. But have that conversation. Just drive right into it. If we try to be if we try to be fancy or tricky or anything like that, it's just going to come back and bite us at the end. You just want to walk right into it and say, you're one of the leaders of the community. You're someone who really puts your heart and passion behind certain areas. I want to see if what we're doing might have some connection with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Real quick,
That-
Paul,
that's
I remember a really like fun example of like how wealth screening informed a conversation with a donor. Of we were helping an organization in North Texas that
yep.
helped people with developmental disabilities, and they had 42 acres. They were on, they had like alpacas and a farm and stuff.
Oh yeah.
The individual we were talking to, or we had well screened, did not have a really affinity for that area, but they did have an affinity for like animals and
And they
care.
had given a lot of money to animals,
Yes, and
a lot
during
of
the course of
money.
the conversation, I remember Paul worked in. You know how much it costs to feed those darn things, and the donor immediately like self-elect. I want to do that.
she
And
gave
so
us she gave us
it's not always that, seamless and easy, but it was because we knew of that affinity and we knew of the capacity that we were able to kind of help guide that conversation to that final like area
I'll
where it
never
wasn't
forget that
something they
because
were
she goes,
passionate in. We were able to connect it to the mission, and then we're off to the races.
yeah, I told her, I said, the development director kind of was trying to do his I'm gonna get everything in kind of thing. And I stopped there and I go, do you know it cost us $25,000 a year to feed those stupid things? And she just stopped. She goes, that I want to do that. And she wrote a check for 75,000 to feed the alpacas. Go figure, right? So I think someone had a question, Evan, about little green light. Can you take that
I
one?
did see that one, and somebody, it looks like Aaron answered it in the chat there. LGL does have integrations with all the ones he listed there, Donor Search, Wealth Engine. They also, you can, if you find some other tool out there, I know they also work with Zapier. If anybody's familiar with them, it's kind of like a third party platform where it can be kind of the mediator between Little Green Light and whatever tool you're using. So just a helpful tidbit there. Susan also had a question about what do you mean when donors are good at hiding their wealth? Um,
So the Susan, actually, the wealthier they are, the better they hide their wealth, which means they will do it they'll start their family foundation, which you don't find when you look for an individual. They'll give through a donor advised fund. They will give in different ways. They will say, as opposed to giving directly, they might be at an event and give through that event, or they'll give anonymously. A lot of donors, you've seen that. You can look at almost anybody's annual report, and probably in the first top 5 donors, there's going to be someone who's anonymous. Now, by the way, even though they can hide it, they're still very, very wealthy, the ones that hide it. So they still come up as wealthy. We just don't get a total picture of what they're giving. So we still know they have great capacity. We might not know their propensity to give as much because they're giving through different areas, and their affinity sometimes is hidden. But capacity, when you get to that high wealth area, it's really hard to hide that a lot. But they do it some. I hope that answered that, Susan.
Yeah, and just to tack on to that, so whenever I just think about it as they're adding layers of difficulty intentionally.
Yeah.
Of they're adding, they're putting their money over in the trust and writing the check from there, or they're doing it from an IRA, or they're doing it from, like Paul mentioned, anonymously donor advised fund, and all of those things are just designed to add like a layer or three of separation between what's publicly reported, which is what a lot of these wealth screening tools look at, and then how the money gets there. And so just Some of it you can get to quicker in a conversation. Some of it you can get to quicker through well screening tools. It's all just a matter of that.
And we're seeing a lot of movement, Susan, coming from individuals starting to give through donor advised funds for a lot of that reason. If you look at the recent Giving USA and Chronicle, the list that came out about how donors are giving this year, you can see individuals went down a tick, but foundations went up, and a lot of people feel that's a lot of it through donor advised funds or those foundations.
Yeah. And real quick, that's just a brief little asterisk of why it's important if you do have a database like a little green light or something else that you're on your soft credit game, because you can, if you can still track those donations of where they came from, if they came from this foundation, but you're soft crediting, because most DAFs will give you that award letter saying it's from so and so, or just the reporting around that becomes more important as people shift to giving that way.
Thanks. Any other questions, anybody?
We have one last one from Karen. Any thoughts on how to handle living in small communities and finding new potential donors who are large donors to neighbor organizations? Balancing kind of upping your fundraising and hoping it doesn't negatively affect the other, like that competition.
Yeah, it's you know what, gosh, I'm probably Karen. I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I am pretty. I think Evan would probably say he knew me when I used to raise funds. I'm pretty aggressive for my organizations that I'm working with, and it is a really hard balance, especially in small communities. I'm working with a few clients that are in those small communities, and how do we do that, right? Because someone else has a great cause. I look at it this way, and what I said a little bit earlier, you're there to facilitate that donor's philanthropy. And if they decide to do it through you, and to work with your organization because they feel a bigger impact, then that's all you can really worry about in that situation. And I know that's hard to do, but yeah, so you need to look at that piece of it and just realize that, again, it goes back to the donor intent. What are they most interested in, and how can we facilitate that the very, very best for them and make philanthropy a good experience for them? Unfortunately, in my position, I get to work with donors a lot of times that haven't had a great experience with organizations. And I get to kind of talk the organization back into their good graces, if you would. When we do feasibility studies, we get to see that all the time. Karen, I can tell you, I went back to my alma mater, which is a small faith-based school in Texas, to be their vice president. And when they asked me to be their vice president, it was the first time I had heard from them, and I'd been gone 25, 28 years. So they had never reached out to me at all to be in the alumni or anything like that. Nothing at all. And I went back as their vice president. And I remember my first year of calling donors, I called it the apology year, because all I did was get on the phone with people and go, I'm so sorry how we, acted in the past. And remember, this is a faith-based school, and I got cussed out a few times. Some people use some colorful language to tell me why they're not giving to the university. So it's just something you need to look at with that.
And I would tack on there too, Paul, like if you look at your own as an organization, look at your case for support and what are your distinctives, what sets you apart from those other organizations? What impact are you making that they are not making? And then using the well screening, using what you know about the donor, your relational knowledge to like, are we lined up with what their giving priorities are? If we're not, are there some things that we do that that organization doesn't do that that donor has a heart for? So to Paul's point, like you're facilitating that philanthropy, but you're also looking at what do you offer the community that those other organizations don't? And I think being able to tell that story in an effective way, you're not taking, you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul to use an analogy, but you're being able to kind of lean into, it's the donor decision as far as how much they're going to give and where. And so I would just I would encourage you find your distinctives and don't be afraid to ask. Don't take the no out of the donor's mouth.
Hey, Ricky, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you both so much for presenting. Thank you everyone for
Thank
attending
you. I hope you
today.
enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
thank
Guys,
you,
I
Ricky,
threw
and
my
everybody. It's been a pleasure.